Hello guys and girls, and welcome to today's video. As you can see here on the screen, our topic that we're going to be going over in this video today is using context clues to find the meaning of unknown words. And our whole purpose with this is to help you become a better reader, and we're going to talk about how using context clues will help to accomplish that as we go through these notes for today. On the topic of notes, you should have a note-taking sheet glued into your language arts notebook. Please make sure you have that ready to go. You also need to make sure that you have a pencil ready to go so that you're prepared and can get everything filled in the way that you need to. On these slides today, the color that you need to be paying attention to is the color orange. If you see something written in the color orange, it is a good indication that you probably need to fill something in on your note-taking sheet. So just make sure that you are following along, paying attention, and if you have all of your supplies ready, we're going to jump in here and get started. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of our notes for today, I have a question that I would like you to answer because I feel like this is something we've all experienced before. It says we've all had those moments when we're reading a text and we come across a word we don't know the meaning of. And what I would like to know is when this happens, what do you do? So if you are reading a passage or you're reading a book and you get to a word and you don't recognize the word, maybe you can't read the word, or maybe you can read it but you don't know what it means, how do you typically handle that situation? Go ahead and answer that question for me now. So I'll just be totally honest and transparent with you guys and let you know that for a big part of my life, I was not the greatest reader in the world. In fact, when I was young, I had to get a lot of extra help and support in reading because it just wasn't something that came naturally to me. And when I was young, if I came across a word in a text and I didn't know what the word was, I would just skip the word and I would keep moving. The issue with that, especially now that we're in the eighth grade and we're starting to get into passages that are maybe a little more challenging, you guys are going to be in high school soon, so you're going to be coming across some things that maybe you've never learned before. You can't just skip words because those words might be really important to the meaning of the passage that you're reading. And so our lesson today is going to be about using context clues. And context clues are words or sentences that are around an unknown word. And those words or sentences can help you figure out what that unknown word means. So the whole theme today with our presentation is a detective or trying to solve a mystery, because when you're using context clues, you do become a lot like a detective. You have to use the clues in the sentence to figure out what the unknown word means. Now, you are going to notice that here on this slide, there are a couple of things that are underlined and are in the color orange. And remember, like I said at the beginning, if you see something in orange, that is a clue that you need to write it down. So make sure you have your note-taking sheet filled out, and then we'll move on. So in our presentation today, we're going to talk about 3 different strategies that you can use to find the meaning of unknown words. And our first one that we're going to talk about is definition. Our second one is called synonyms and antonyms. And then our third one is examples. And if you take a look at your note-taking sheet, you're going to notice that the rest of it that you haven't filled out yet is divided into these 3 sections. We have a definition section for strategy 1, synonyms and antonyms for strategy 2, and examples for strategy 3. Again, please just make sure you are filling in your notes as you go through the rest of these slides. So let's dive into strategy 1, which is the definition strategy. Definition clues appear near an unfamiliar word and tell the reader the word's meaning. Notice that this is highlighted and underlined in orange. Definition context clues are my favorite type of context clues because they actually tell you what the word means right there in the sentence. So here's our example. It says, seahorses have prehensile tails, or tails that allow them to grasp things, helping them hold seaweed and hunt for food. The unknown word that we're trying to figure out the meaning of in this sentence is prehensile. Now, to be perfectly honest, I don't know before creating these slides if I had ever seen that word before. I do like the ocean, but I'm not an expert on seahorses. And so when the sentence said that seahorses have prehensile tails, I had no idea what that meant. But what's really nice about this sentence is that it actually tells us what that means right there in the sentence. It says prehensile tails, or tails that allow them to grasp things. So that tells me that a prehensile tail is a tail that is unique to a seahorse, and it allows them to grab things like seaweed and when they're hunting for food. On your note-taking sheet, make sure that you have the word meaning filled in. And then on your example sentence, I want you to underline what is underlined here on the screen and written in red. So take your pencil and underline where it says tails that allow them to grasp things. And then underneath the example, right here in orange, we have the meaning for prehensile, and you're adding this to your note-taking sheet as well. So I'm going to go over that one more time. Make sure you fill in the word meaning. Make sure you underline in the example sentence on your notes what is underlined here on the screen, and then fill in the meaning for the word prehensile in the space that you have provided for you on your note-taking sheet. Please feel free to pause the video if you need to, or if you're ready, you can go ahead and move on. Strategy 2 are synonyms and antonym clues. So before we can really dive into this strategy, we need to talk about what synonyms and antonyms are. Synonyms are two words that have the same or almost the same meaning. So an example of that would be big and large. Big and large are synonyms because even though these are different words, they pretty much mean the same thing. Antonyms are words that have opposite meanings. So, for example, large and small. These are antonyms because large is the opposite of small. And we have to understand these definitions before we can dive into strategy 2. You do have a few things to fill in here, so go ahead and get those filled in on your note-taking sheet, and then we'll move on. Let's talk about synonyms first. Synonyms are clues that define a word by giving another word in the sentence that has the same or almost the same meaning. So when we're looking for a synonym context clue, we're looking at the unknown word in the sentence, and we're going to see if there's another word in the sentence that has a very similar meaning. So our example sentence here says, the photography teacher was surprised that so many students were adept using photo editing software. They were skilled at using it with very little instruction. Our unknown word here is adept. We have to try to figure out what that word means. And if we put on our detective hat and get out our magnifying glass and look later in the sentence, the key word or the clue word here is skilled. Now, adept might be a word that you're not super familiar with, but skilled is probably a word that you've heard before. And so that tells me that adept and skilled are synonyms. They have really similar meanings. So I can use that to figure out that adept means that you're probably able to do something very well. So in other words, this sentence, the photography teacher was surprised that so many students were adept using photo editing software. He was surprised that they were able to use that photo editing software well. And again, we use the word skilled here to help us figure that out. On your note-taking sheet, in the space that you have for our synonym definition, make sure you fill in the word same. In our example sentence, make sure you underline the word skilled. And then in the space that you have under that example sentence, add what we have down here, which is the definition of adept, able to do something well. So you have several things to fill in on your note-taking sheet. The word same, we're underlining the word skilled, we're filling in our definition for adept, and then you can move on to the next slide. Now let's talk about antonyms. Antonym clues define a word by giving another word in the sentence that has the opposite meaning of the unknown word. So this is the opposite of what we just talked about. Remember, with synonyms, we get a word in the sentence that has a very similar meaning, but with antonyms, we get a word in the sentence that has the opposite meaning. So our example says, I am an epic failure when it comes to cooking a meal. However, baking cookies, cakes, and pies is my forte. Forte is our unknown word here. We're trying to figure out what that word means. And again, if we put on our detective hat and we look at the words or the sentences around forte, we have a clue up here at the beginning. Epic failure. Oops, let's go back. Epic failure. So it has the word however here, which is a big key that we might have an antonym in the sentence. So this person is saying that when they bake cookies, cakes, and pies, they're good at it, but they're an epic failure when it comes to cooking a meal. So the opposite of something being a failure would be something being a strength. So that tells me that forte might mean strength. So I am an epic failure when it comes to cooking a meal. However, baking cookies, cakes, and pies is my forte or is my strength. On your note-taking sheet, you have a few things that you need to fill in here. You're going to fill in the word opposite. You are going to underline epic failure. And then you are filling in the word strength for the definition of forte. Make sure you do those things, and when you've done that, you can move on. All right, our last and final strategy here is example. Example context clues give examples of the unknown word to help portray the word's meaning. So let's look at an example of this. Common afflictions associated with old age are arthritis, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Our unknown word here is afflictions. We're trying to figure out what that means. And then it gives us some examples of afflictions for people who are old. The examples are arthritis, high blood pressure, and heart disease. If I think about how these are examples of afflictions, I know that arthritis, high blood pressure, and heart disease are not good things, so this is going to be something negative, and it applies to people who are old. So I'm going to guess that afflictions might mean something that causes you pain. So common things that cause pain for people who are old are arthritis, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Make sure that you have copied the examples word in your definition. Underline what you see in red on the screen in the example sentence, and then fill in the definition for afflictions, and then you can move on. All right, last part of our lesson today, we're just going to do a little bit of practice. So I'm going to read this example sentence to you, and you're going to guess what you think the word that is underlined might mean. When choosing which candidate to vote for, integrity is the trait that I value most. Who wants to elect a dishonest leader? We're trying to figure out what the word integrity means, so go ahead and tell me, do you think integrity means honest or helpful? Select your answer. Integrity is being honest. I noticed if I put on my detective hat the word dishonest in the sentence, but we're talking about someone who is the opposite of that. So this is an antonym clue, like we talked about just a few minutes ago. The opposite of dishonest is honest. So if we plug honest into the sentence, it's going to make sense. When choosing which candidate to vote for, honesty is the trait that I value most. Who wants to elect a leader that is dishonest? So A was the correct answer for this one. After a long day of fishing with few results, our campsite dinner was just a meager meal of crackers and one fish divided into 7 portions. We are trying to figure out the meaning of the word meager. Do you think it means comforting or small? Go ahead and select your answer. The correct answer here was small. There are some clues in the sentence to help us figure that out. It does tell us that all they had to eat was some crackers and one fish divided into 7 portions. I can tell that, unless it's a really big fish, is probably not very much food. So small is the correct answer here. All right, last one. I didn't bother asking my parents to spend $100 on concert tickets. I know they're too frugal or cheap to buy something like that. Do you think frugal means cheap or does it mean cautious? Select your answer. All right, this is one of my favorite types of context clues. This was a definition example. What's nice is it gave us the definition right here in the sentence. So frugal does mean cheap. Thank you for following along today. Make sure you have your notes filled in, and that concludes this video for today.